Hi, I'm Michael Wan. Thanks for watching us today. The fake Trump is anti-Semite narrative. That is the subject of today's op-ed live. Well, the accused gunman who opened fire inside a Pittsburgh synagogue last Saturday arrived in court yesterday, and prosecutors have put in motion the process to seek the death penalty in the anti-Semitic attack. Authorities say Robert Bowers stormed into the Tree of Life Congregation Synagogue in the affluent Squirrel Hill neighborhood shouting hate for Jews and killing worshippers in a 20-minute attack. Police were notified of the shooting at 9:54 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. 11 lives were taken Saturday morning. 2 other worshippers were injured and 4 officers also were injured. Many of them had gathered for a naming ceremony which marks the beginning of a baby's journey in the Jewish faith. Robert Bowers, a 46-year-old long-haul trucker, was charged late Saturday with 29 federal counts, including hate crimes. He had posted anti-Semitic rants on social media, including Gab, a fringe website favored by neo-Nazis. It appears Bowers authored a social media post before the shooting accusing the organization HIAS, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, of bringing invaders in that kill our people. It's unclear who Bowers meant when he said our people. The account also mentioned that Bowers did not vote for Trump because Trump was too soft on those of Jewish faith. Details of the shooting and the motive are still under investigation. But the mainstream media, right on cue, without missing a beat, started blaming President Trump for the massacre, from CNN to NBC to New York Times, etc., etc. Democrats and their establishment media allies blamed President Trump for the shooting massacre at the synagogue, even as they themselves continue their associations with anti-Semites like Louis Farrakhan. While CNN, NBC News, and the Democrat National Committee continue to hide their own connections to one of the most rabid anti-Semites this country has ever produced, in turn, they lie about Trump and the terrorist who murdered 11 innocent people. This is what they do. And this is why Trump is saying that the mainstream media is the enemy of the American people. I believe that too. The mainstream media is the enemy of the people. Let me tell you some facts. Trump is the most pro-Jewish and pro-Israel, pro-Semite presidents we have ever had, period. Whoever disputes that are just mainstream media Kool-Aid drinkers. Israel was Trump's second international trip as president. He was the first president to visit the old city of Jerusalem. And it was Trump who finally ended decades of presidential lip service by actually moving the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And did the media forget that Trump's daughter Ivanka, a close aide of his in the White House, is Jewish? She converted to Judaism to marry her husband Jared Kushner. Kushner is President Trump's son-in-law, and he is currently one of the president's closest and most trusted advisors. I don't know whether that is a good thing. People can criticize of nepotism, but one thing you can't deny is the fact that Trump is very pro-Israel and very pro-Semite. Just to add more facts, Trump's grandchildren are Jewish and being raised in the Jewish faith. If that is not convincing enough, the man who murdered 11 people in that synagogue Saturday despised Trump. I repeat, the murderer despised President Trump. Yet the mainstream media still wants to ignore all this and want to brainwash people to hate Trump. And most of the international media outlet, especially the Korean media, they have just pretty much translated what the New York Times and Washington Post and the CNN put out there, which is a shame. Therefore, President Trump cannot be a neo-Nazi. Of course, the lying fake news media would like American people to believe that narrative. And I know that a lot has been brainwashed by the media. The media is powerful. But there are plenty of Americans who are red-pilled. They don't believe what the mainstream media is reporting. Just look at what happened with the Associated Press fake news that came out recently. President Trump criticized the Associated Press last Wednesday over a headline it had on a story about comments he made on the midterm elections, saying the headline was very different from my quote and meaning in the story. The headline on the AP story from Tuesday reads this: Trump tells AP he won't accept blame if GOP loses House. This is complete nonsense and completely fabricated fake news. So the president took issue with that language in a Wednesday morning tweet last Wednesday, and he said, AP headline was very different from my quote and meaning in the story. They just can't help themselves. Fake news. So what Trump said was, when AP asked him whether Trump would be to blame if Republicans lose the House in the upcoming midterms, Trump's answer was this: no, I think I'm helping people. I don't believe anybody's ever had this kind of an impact. So he gave a positive answer, that his influence for the House election is positive. But somehow AP twisted this and made it a complete fake news. They said Trump tells AP he won't accept blame if GOP loses House. It seems their narrative was to try to make Trump look like an irresponsible president who wouldn't take responsibility if the GOP loses the House. So these are the shenanigans that the mainstream media is putting out there. And a lot, especially the international media outlets, I'm telling not just the Korean media, but also probably the Chinese, the Japanese, most of the major media outlets, they are spreading these lies internationally. Because people in Korea, for instance, in South Korea, they don't know that New York Times and Washington Post and AP became fake news media outlets. They don't know this. They just take it as it is. They consider it like a Bible, which is a shame. So anyway, there is no connection whatsoever between Trump or anyone in his administration with anti-Semites or anti-Semitism, period. And for the mainstream media to even try to put out that narrative is not just ridiculous, it is despicable. And viewers and readers will remember these kind of fake news. American people will remember these kind of fake news when they go to the voting booth. Let me tell you some examples of anti-Semitism messages that the mainstream media has spread it. Like in CNN's case, CNN contributor Mark Lamont Hill has a long history of associating with defending and praising anti-Semite Farrakhan. And NBC News, for instance, MSNBC anchor Al Sharpton has a long and sordid history of his own monstrous acts of anti-Semitism. I got these informations from Breitbart, which is one of the few media outlets that are spreading true news. And Al Sharpton, even as an employee at NBC, he has continued to defend and even as recently as last month publicly associated with Farrakhan. And the Democrat National Committee, no less than the co-chair of the Democrat National Committee, Representative Keith Ellison has a long and sordid association with Farrakhan that includes lying about his recent contacts, recent as in 2013 and 2016. I think this, I saw that, Keith Ellison back in couple weeks ago during the Politicon event, and I think whatever words he comes out of his mouth, it's always 100% anti-Trump. And former President Barack Obama, the establishment media, the legacy media, hid his photo from the public with being with Farrakhan because they didn't want the people to see that. Because people know that Farrakhan is an anti-Semite. And former President Bill Clinton, just last month, a former American president, shared a dais with Farrakhan, which would be no different than former President George W. Bush sharing a dais with David Duke. Yeah. And Maxine Waters, for instance, when not smearing Trump as racist, Maxine Waters attends Farrakhan speeches where she is treated as a guest of honor. But I have never seen the mainstream media denouncing them. So that is your mainstream media bias right there. Well, that's our show for today. Our show is not about left or right, it's about right or wrong. To stay up to date with our latest videos, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel by clicking subscribe. Thanks for tuning in.